Well, once again, we're in Ezekiel, and we're looking at a whole section at one time, but specific chapters for some specifics. Chapters 25 through 32, which deal with the judgment of the nations surrounding Israel and Judah. And so we are looking at exactly what was prophesied, while simultaneously we're seeing the siege of Jerusalem and the temple and all of the prophecies that have been made in chapters 1 through 24. But now the nations that had been making a fuss about Israel and had been the enemy of Israel are being told through Ezekiel, God is saying that they're going to face judgment as well. Now, the seven nations involved are Siddim, Tyre, Philistia, and Egypt, Ammon, Moab, and Edom. So we have the seven nations that will be seeing judgment, and we see there's a reason for each of these judgments. For example, as we go through those same seven nations again, we find in chapter 25 the judgment of Ammon and Moab. And they're being judged because Ammon had mocked and said, "See, there is nothing special about that nation." Moab had belittled them, and Edom had continued to fight against and create strife between the nations. Philistia had been scorning the nation, and Tyre had been antagonistic, as well as having problems with trade with them, and Egypt battling as well. All of these happen in these 8 chapters, and so each of these nations are being told that they're going to face problems as a result of that. Yesterday we looked at the fact that Tyre, in spite of all of its benefits, would be judged as well. And let's take a look at some of that. So in chapter 27, we find that this is a very interesting city because it has a beautiful, beautiful setting. It's right on the seaside. We notice its beauty is called out in verses 1 through 4. In verses 5 through 11, it has an incredible strength. It's a very strong seaport city with a lot of trade. In verses 12 through 25, we know that they have great wealth and prosperity. And so we see that it's a very unlikely city to be overthrown. But even if it's overthrown, the chance of pushing all of those debris from the mainland city part to the island city part were extremely unusual. And yesterday we looked at that. We looked at the fact that Alexander the Great made this prophecy come to pass around 332 BC. An incredible prophecy fulfillment that is very well documented in history. Both the scraping of the ruins of the city of Tyre into the ocean, as well as the lamenting that would be done because the city was truly, truly destroyed. And the most miraculous part was that there were a handful of people out of a large population that were saved because they fled to the temple, which is a beautiful picture of those that trust in Christ for their salvation will be saved. But we want to look particularly today at verses 34 through 36 as we look at chapter 27, and we look at the lament of Tyre. Now that you are broken by the sea and the depths of the water, your merchandise and all your company have fallen into the midst of you. All of the inhabitants of the coastlands are appalled at you, and their kings are horribly afraid. They are troubled in countenance. The merchants among the peoples hiss at you, and you have become terrified, and you will cease to be forever. So just one of hundreds of prophecies that God made about different things that were going to happen that have been fulfilled, and we have historical records to prove not only that God prophesied that it would happen, but that it did happen. And it's just a very interesting story about Alexander the Great destroying the city, scraping the ruins off of the city into the sea to make a causeway to go across to the island of Tyre, and destroy it, and just a handful of those that sought the temple, the protection of God, were saved. And I hope that you'll reflect on all of the prophecies that make the Bible so believable and so easy to accept, not just totally by faith, but faith with evidence. And there's certainly plenty of evidence here for us to believe that the Bible is true, cover to cover, and that the prophecies are extra evidence that even the skeptics would have a hard time explaining away. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.